Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast with your host, Mark Kennedy. I am joined this week of the full house. This week on the Hurling podcast, I have Ruairi Walsh, I have Kieran Collins, and I have James Mulcare back from Portugal. And I suppose, guys, plenty to get through after last weekend's fixtures. Limerick 0-3 as they were comprehensively out-hurled by Cork. Clare registering their first win, the return of Tony Kelly, Peter Duggan. And Wexford probably having a very marquee road trip win against Galway. Dublin probably the marquee result, going down to Thurles, beating Tip. And Watford probably having a bit of a scare against Antrim. Lads, how are things?
Good, Mark.
All good now, Mark, yeah. Yourself?
Very good, very good. Well, being from Limerick, I don't know, Kieran, is it time to press the panic button here, or depth chart issues and discipline issues again? But maybe we go to the Cork-Limerick game straight off the bat here. I mean, Cork named their side on Friday night, really set the tone early, and Limerick really had no response. What were your overriding feelings, emotions, Kieran, of the game?
Jesus, really out-hurled, outclassed every part of the field. I think Cork wanted to win a lot more than Limerick did for probably their own reasons, but they were very impressive. Physically, they put it up to Limerick, but still, there isn't the same intensity that we're used to seeing with Limerick. So I'm not panicking just yet. Still have 6-7 weeks to get up to speed. It reminded me, seeing them play, reminded me how they played against Tip in the Munster final in the first half last year. So if they can turn it around in 15 minutes, they can surely turn it around in 6-7 weeks. That's the plan. That's the hope anyway.
There you go. I love the attitude, Kieran. Well, the flip side of that, James Mulcare, being a proud Corkman that you are, you must be a bit of cock-a-hoop after that result last Sunday.
Yeah, I thought they were very impressive in that first half. Normally, with this Cork team before, they've been accused of being a bit flaky or a bit soft at times. You know, they're well able to hurl when it's a loose enough game. But I thought they brought something different on Sunday. There was a physicality and aggression to them, which is just something that you wouldn't be used to with this team. Like, they set their stall out early, that they wouldn't be bullied. And even players like that you normally wouldn't associate with that kind of style, like Meehan, he was getting stuck in. His work rate was very, very good. He was taking stuff into the tackle. He was going up the hand or puck outs. Like, I thought he was actually very good for the 50 minutes that he was on or so before he kind of ran out of gas. But he got 2 lovely scores in the first half. Work rate was just much improved. Now, I suppose you could maybe make the case that at times, you know, there was an edge to it, that maybe they were a little bit overly aggressive at times. Like the red cards for Kingston deserved red cards. It was he left it in there on Finn, but maybe I think Finn maybe left a little bit in on him after he got his goal. But yeah, Flanagan then immediately after that, I thought he was awful stupid, because you've just handed the advantage. Like, you got the extra man advantage for a second half, and 60 seconds later, give the referee no choice. But Toomey later on then as well could, like, another head high tackle he had on, I think that was on Hannon, he could have gone as well. If the other two are reds, like, that's surely a red as well, you know. But I thought their use of the ball was very good. Cork's were, like Limerick are good at, they're kind of flooding the ball flooding the players into where the ball is being played. And anytime there was a bottleneck on one side of the pitch, Cork were very good at kind of releasing the ball and switching it across the field, you know, to where there was no traffic then, and they were able to build from there. I thought, you know, Collins was actually kind of nearly playing as a 15th outfield player at times. They were able to pop passes back to him, build attacks from there. You know, he's the fella that seems to be improving throughout the league. Would have been question marks in Cork, I'd say, around his distribution last year and before this year, but he does seem to be improving in that department. And I thought he was, very, very good yesterday, and gave them a platform for which to build their attacks from. I thought in the forward line they were very clever in the movement as well. You know, Horgan, he was very unselfish at times, and, you know, instrumental in both goals. I thought, like, 2 lovely passes to set up, and I thought just running in general was good in the forward line, that created space for others, and they ran through Limerick right through the middle. And at times, their back six was, you know, quite solid as well, I thought. They kind of a fluid sort of system there. With, you know, Coleman was named at half back, but, you know, Mellerick went in there and he did an excellent job, I thought, on Lynch. Great man marking job. He was very good. Yeah, they're just impressive so far this year. They're kind of building game by game. And the young players coming through seem to be making, you know, big impact as well. Kieran Joyce, I thought, excellent again the last day. Probably, I know Fitzgibbon he was also excellent. He got man to match, but I thought probably could have been given to Joyce. And, you know, even young Darrell Leary coming in there at full back. I thought, like, the back six as a unit were good overall. And yeah, it was just it was a very, very good first half performance from Cork. Really, and the game was done at half time.
Exactly. Rory, what were your overriding thoughts on the game? Being a neutral Clare man here.
Well, I don't know how neutral I am, but just to agree with Kieran, I don't think when Limerick named the team, it was clear that they weren't prioritising this. That you could say they were trying out a player in nearly every line, which is, it kind of showed their intention that. And Kylie did make a comment after the Galway game. He said, if it takes another game for us to kind of, it was as if that, another game for us to get things right. And they looked like a team that were, I know, slogging it maybe training wise, that are pitching themselves for championship. But still, Cork were very impressive. And as James said, what was quite impressive was where they were getting turned over against Limerick last year in both league and championship. With the swarm tackle, they were able to work it out. Like, they were that bit better at working the ball out and working it into space from high pressure situations. And also, there was a point in the second half where Limerick rattled off 2 or 3 points, and you could think, is there a comeback on? But I thought Cork handled that quite well. They steadied the ship, whereas maybe in the past, that might have been like we saw what Limerick was tipping the Munster final last year with the crowd behind them, and the crowd were just beginning to get going. And I thought Cork handled that moment quite well. And it's something, maybe in championship that might stand to them, that they were in a position where it did look like that Limerick could get back at them, and they did. As I said, they did kind of react quite well to that. But yeah, again, I wouldn't be, if I was, like, this game would be forgotten about in 2 months' time. Limerick go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and turn them over down there. But there are signs. Again, the discipline again was an issue. He had I thought Will O'Donoghue was kind of lucky. He was on a yellow and he left a late tackle in. So you could have had like 5 red cards altogether in the game. But yeah, it certainly is something that it has gone game to game. And I know it was an issue last year and it was rectified going into championship. But yeah, it's something I'm sure that John Kelly wouldn't have wanted to have seen was another red card.
I think as well that the media seem to be making a big. There's a very big push on with the media, and refs are like every game now. Refs are looking at it, and they're really focusing in on Limerick. The media coverage, I heard Anthony Daly talking on his podcast saying, that in '98 they really got distracted. Like it is a thing that Kylie's going to have to manage, that you don't get overly distracted by everything that's going on and all the focus that's going on them. He's going to have to, I suppose, he's going to have to kind of turn it into kind of a siege mentality for them, for the next 7 or 8 weeks to build up for it. But yeah, discipline does seem to be a thing that refs are really clamping down on with Limerick at the moment.
I think as well, looking at towards the end of the game, there seemed to be a bit of frustration in Limerick. Like you see, Will O'Donoghue, the way he left in it, he could have easily been sent off. There was a lot of off the ball and dirty stuff going on. It really set it up for explosive first round in Cork, like Easter Sunday. Like in reality, like at Limerick, looking at Limerick, there are a few players that you could name that they are on the edge, and Flanagan, Gillan, like they can tip either way very quickly. Would I like them to lose it? Probably not, because that's why they're as good as they are. But you do have to keep a lid on it. Flanagan, it was ridiculous. You're handed an advantage for the whole. You're going to have for the whole second half. A minute later, he's handed it straight back to them. So I think you need to keep a lid on it. Now, from a Limerick point of view, it's happening in the league. It can be used against them. It can be used as motivation going forward. If it's going to happen, better that it happens this time of year. But Cork were impressive and not going to take away from it all. They really blew it out of the park. I do think, though, that the work rate isn't there in Limerick at the minute, be it a heavy training schedule. That might be true. But even Shane Downing referenced one point where Hoggy had the ball and he had space and time and no one came near him. He said, like usual, Limerick fella hitting him from the back, the side and the front. So the work rate wasn't there. Tackling wasn't the same as usual. Regarding our forward line situation, I think players who are at the same level of hurling, and there's a huge gap to the rest. I think Reedy, O'Connell, I don't like from what I've seen this year. I don't think they're championship players. Definitely not starters. So it does leave the question of corner forward. If Graham Mulcare has the legs or not, I don't know. Maybe we could see Cathal O'Neill named corner forward but playing deep like Mulcare would have played over the years for Limerick. But there's still a huge question over corner forward for me. It's going to be 4 games in 6 weeks. It's a tough ask, and I think you need every 15 players on song. Like
I think that's the thing that stood out as well, is that nobody's really putting their hand up for Limerick, and Kylie kind of reverted to tried and trusted players at half time and pull lads off, and it does seem to be the case that you have your 17 or 18 there for Limerick that are best in the country, but after that then maybe there's the strength and depth isn't there. What maybe we kind of thought that there was there, or that we kind of thought coming into the year that there might be more ahead of everyone else, but it does seem that the case that you're relying on your tried and trusted, and if you do have an injury or two there, or if there's a red card or something in disciplinary issues, that it might be a bit short.
Yeah, well, I think definitely for Flanagan, it's a costly red card. He's suspended for the rest of the league.
2 game suspension, isn't it? Because it's the second in 12 months, is it? Yeah, that's the way it works.
Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, he's,
The only thing I will say, one of those games against Offaly, which you could go fairly no disrespect to Offaly there now, but they couldn't go fairly experimental there, and they'll come away with the 2 points handy enough, and then it's the clear game at this weekend. Yeah, they're missing 4, so the ponder. Really.
You're coming to the end of your league now, and you're going to want to see your 15 players on the field. I think if not this day, definitely the last day. So I think your time for experimenting is over. So come the Offaly game, you're going to want to have your starting 15 there and get match practice into as a unit.
He knows what he knows the path now is very simple for them. They've got 2 games in the league, and then it's a 4-week build up into the Cork game. So I mean, the Kilkenny team in the 2000s, those A versus B games and training sessions were. They were notorious for the ferocity. I'd imagine that, there's going to be an interesting 4 weeks in Limerick as they built to that Cork game. That's set up for, I'd say, a ferocious battle, the first round of the Munster.
But also I think as well, we've seen a kind of an evolution last year from 2020 with Connacht style of play. Goals weren't on the agenda in 2020. Last year, there was a bit of a tweak where we saw a lot more goals in Limerick. Will we see another tweak this year? By playing as poor as we're playing, are we not showing other teams our hand? So will we come with a new way, not a new way, but a tweak to our system, or maybe a positional change that will throw everyone off the bat? You just have to, I think, from a Limerick point of view, we're going to have to trust in Kiley and Connacht. Hopefully there's something up their sleeve to turn it around.
What's the one thing that you noticed from the games last day as well is there was absolutely no real goal threat in them. I know obviously they did get the goal all right, but that probably should have been a free out anyway for Lynch's foul. But there was just I thought the Cork full backline were comfortable enough, to be honest with you. There was no real. I didn't feel there was any kind of threat inside there at all from Limerick.
Sorry, Mark. On the first night we spoke about who the newcomers would be, and Joyce has been the revelation of the championship for me. Himself and Fitzgibbon have just forged an immediate partnership midfield, and they have been the midfield partnership of the championship. And Joyce has just slotted straight in there like a guy who's been playing intercounty for years. And he's got 3 consistent performances in a row. Well, against Clare he was outstanding. Against Limerick I thought they definitely won that midfield battle again. And he just seems to be a real find for Cork in terms of, I know he was on the radar underage, but for a guy who just seems at the moment to just slot straight into Cork team midfield in an area where with Bill Cooper and it's just a huge boost for Cork to have, every year you want new guys coming on and strengthening the team, and he is definitely so far strengthened the team.
I agree.
Absolutely, yeah, he's been excellent, and he just seems to be so composed on the ball, and no panic in him at all. So a right find for Cork, all right.
That was super result for Cork. Great statement of intent, and as you say, Kieran, April, Easter Sunday, I think that's going to be a ferocious battle, and Limerick have the motivation plenty there after that loss anyway in front of the home crowd again. So maybe we can move on here, guys, and we were kind of talking Offaly playing Limerick. Now they entertained Clare and Tullamore, O'Connor Park, and 420 to 16 points the full-time score. But I suppose, Rory, coming to you, probably from a full-time perspective, the result really doesn't tell the whole story, does it? In terms of Offaly being pretty prominent there until probably minute 54, 55. Mercurial, Tony Kelly added again, 2-12. And probably Peter Duggan back in as well with a tiny introduction as well. What were your thoughts?
It was nip and tuck, score for score all the way through until that kind of 57, 58 minute where Clare stormed away and finished really strongly. Tony Kelly just was like he was never gone. There was no Tony Kelly needing a game or two to get back to speed, scoring 2-12 and 1-5 from play. And again, there were I don't know if you saw the highlights on TG Carr on Monday night, but the scores were from the sideline, on the run, full speed, left side, right side. It was a complete Tony Kelly kind of cameo performance in a way. And great to see Duggan back. When I saw he was named on the bench, it's good. As I mentioned last week, he needs game time for a guy who's missed out for a year or two, and his injury came at the wrong time. But hopefully, there's 2 more rounds to go, plus a few weeks challenge games coming into the championship as well. You'd hope that he will get enough match fitness to make an impact in the championship. Yeah, John Conlon, it was interesting. Played forwards against Wexford, wing back against Offaly. I wonder, is it a reaction to Clare's backline so far that Brian Lohan is kind of thinking that this is a necessity? He has forwards coming back off the treatment table. Shane O'Donnell to return as well. He's kind of saying forwards, I can afford to maybe move somebody with experience like John Conlon back there, because it's something that needed tightening up. And I know he has played half back line with Clonlara before. He played centre back last year. So if you were to move anyone back there, he's probably the prime candidate. But interesting to see how that'll go against Limerick, where it'll be really tested on Sunday.
I think Sunday is going to be a barometer for both teams, really, isn't it? To see where, as I said, second last game, Clare aren't going to want to lose at home, but there's still going to be an element of shadow boxing maybe with the championship around the corner. But in reality, Limerick need to win, and obviously Clare, a win to do no harm either. But there'll be a lot of games this weekend where, I think Cork and Galway as well is another barometer to see where. I think Galway thought they were up there, but the Limerick form since they played Cork has been just completely ridiculed. So, there'll be a lot of games this weekend where a true form and see where teams are going will be known after this weekend, I suppose.
Yeah, for me as well, you want to see that your team is progressing. And when they played in the Munster League final, Limerick let Clare go short in the puck out, and then they turned them over. And at the time, it was glaringly obvious that Clare needed to work on this. So even if that improves, it's a sign that they're going in the right direction and they're working on something that that was a problem for them. Because I'd be worried if the same thing happens again. They're kind of thinking what is going on there. But again, sometimes it can be a change of personnel can automatically improve a situation like that. But it'll be interesting to see will Limerick concede the puck out like they did that day and storm the Clare backs, force them into turnovers back in their pitch, because that was Clare could not get the ball. They could not win the ball from a puck out in that Munster League, and that was the biggest issue. Their turnovers on their own puck out was enormous. You're not going to win the game in that situation.
Oh. Do you think Kylie's going to go full all in? Is he going to go full strength at the weekend, do you reckon?
Yeah, at the same time, I think Kylie's probably thinking, okay, we've Clare and Offaly to finish their two potential wins, and we're going into the championship then on a bounce of 2 wins. At the same time, Lohan was probably thinking, not too worried after the first few games, thinking, okay, Offaly, we've a home game against Limerick that should rise the team and the locals and everything, and see can they lay down a marker for championship, and finishing then with Galway Saltail after that. But that's why this game probably is it's the intriguing one in the round, because both teams have to prove a point in a way. Don't think Lohan would be too disappointed if Clare are really competitive and it's a real tight game, and gives them motivation for championship once they don't get dismantled to be the worry.
I think if Clare get a performance the weekend, they're right, Lohan will be happy enough with that.
Yeah, I think so. Because the one time, when the draws came this year, we have 3 home games against Limerick, Munster League, National League and Championship, and the one to win is the Championship. That is the one to win. You can forget about the other two. Nobody will care. But you want to see glimpses that, they're capable of doing that as well. Yeah. Exactly.
I suppose Rory as well, going back to Clare on round 3, Shane Meehan really burst onto it with 2-1. And you've flagged these guys, Crotty, O'Brien and Meehan as well, as being real kind of genuine kind of talents. So I suppose it was good from a Clare perspective that these guys showed very well last Sunday.
Yeah, Shane Meehan is he comes from a background where he was a dual player. He won Munster Player of the Year Gaelic Football minor a couple of years ago. So I think that's helped him. His footwork is really good. He can turn really sharply. He's quick feet. Again, I think even summertime will suit him better, a quick surface. He's going to be a real handful for players if the correct ball is going in there. And also, what was interesting was when Shanahan came in off the bench, himself and Shanahan seemed to forge a partnership there and worked well off each other, which is something that I'm sure that Lohan was intrigued by and might see him try and develop on that this weekend.
Now, going back to Offaly, I think you've alluded to it here, Rory, as well, that they were well in this game for 56, 57 minutes. I suppose Owen Cahill probably dominated the headlines for Offaly again. He scored heavily, 11 points, 10 from frees. I suppose the worry for Offaly right now is 5 points from play. Bit of a concern on how they kind of waned a little bit, particularly in the last 10 minutes, that 3-7 to 1 point burst. But any news, Rory, in terms of Mark Rogers? I know we spoke last week about Mark, in terms of maybe having a serious injury, but reading reports from Clare newspapers, it does seem as if they're hopeful that it's not as serious as first feared.
Yeah, it's like the reporter in the week then was kind of saying that, they're going for further information on it, that it may not be a cruciate ligament injury, which is great news for Mark. But from what I hear, it's still serious enough injury that he will be spending a good bit of time out. And with championship starting in April, you just wonder, even just missing the week or two beforehand coming into it. But the good news is that it isn't as serious as first thought. Well, or it doesn't seem to be. But again, it's not definitive. Like, there hasn't been definitive news out either way. So I suppose we're still waiting. I just hope for Mark's sake, like, because, you know, he was having a great year with UL prior to the injury, and with Clare. He was, as we said last week, he was one guy who was really taking a claim for the starting jersey and championship. You know, that he does, like, that he is back in time for some bit of championship action, hopefully.
But again, a good win, I think, for Clare. I mean, great closing burst there. Great to see Tony Kelly back, Peter Duggan back. Exciting players and something to build on this weekend, going in against Limerick in the Midwest El Clasico. I suppose we can conclude 1A with Galway Wexford. Now, I went up to Pierce Stadium in Salt Hill, run the rule over Galway, and to be honest, Kieran, I was very impressed by Wexford on the day. I thought they were at the pitch of the game from minute one. And I'm kind of
how good is Roy O'Connor? Like, the points from either side, absolutely sensational. Yeah, they're impressive. Don't know how good Galway were, though, Mark. They didn't seem to show it all, did they?
It was a very flat performance, and the fact that no player in the Galway side scored more than 1 point from play really did kind of indicate an awful lot. They seemed a bit flat.
Yeah, I thought they were toothless up front, to be honest with you. Like Conor Whelan not playing, and nobody else. You know, I mean, I think you alluded to that before, Kieran, that you thought that they were going to struggle big time with Canning retired, and it looked like, I thought up front they were completely toothless, and as you said, Mark, there's a lack of energy and just a flat overall performance from them.
The only thing I will say is, like, Shefflin is a cute whore. Like, you know, he's going to keep the powder dry. These guys are going to meet again soon, and he's not going to want to show his hand. But like, from a Wexford point of view, like Liam Ryan, Lee Chin, Conor McDonald, the spine of your team not there, and still performing well and still winning. The two Rex local boys here, unbelievable. Damien Reck was class. The dart he came back for the hook, like, that was a clear goal only for he got the hook in. Oisin Pepper, he's only 18, doing his leaving cert this year. You know, 1-1. I think in the last few years, Wexford mightn't have had a panel, but this year they're giving guys a chance, and they're, you know, I think Egan's been fair, and everyone's getting a fair shot, and he knows who his players are. I think Davey, okay, I don't want to be critical, but he had these certain players, and that was it. He didn't, you know, a bench wasn't something we turned to too often, you know. So I think Egan's, they seem to be playing well with a bit of, don't seem to be as restricted in their play, and they're playing in the right areas. Like, Conor McDonald is an out-and-out full forward. He should be on the square. That's where he's going to be best. He's not going to do anything for you 40 yards off from goal. Roy O'Connor the same. So they're in the positions they need to be in. I think Egan's doing a fantastic job. I really do.
Yeah, I think maybe we were being a bit, and I'm guilty of this, being a bit unkind to Wexford last week, saying round one, Limerick, you know, coming off All Ireland champions down in Wexford. Round two, I said it was a poor standard game. Clare, you know, didn't hurl in the first half with the breeze, and Wexford kind of limped over the line. I think, well, Darragh Egan even referenced that himself. But, like, so now they've beaten Limerick, Clare, and Galway. Two of them away wins. And as you said, Kieran, they have big players to come back as well. So they are in a really good place now. And
no, I would agree with that point. I still do think you could make excuses for either team. Like, Limerick were very poor, as were Clare. And as we just talked about, Galway weren't at the race. So, yes, they've had 3 wins, but how good were the teams they've beaten on the day? Now, Wexford are a confidence team, you know, and the more wins they get, the more the supporters will be behind them. And, like, they're a force to be reckoned to when they have confidence up.
Darragh Egan has got the best out of Rory O'Connor, it seems, so far. Like, because as he is the marked man, everything going out there is going to say, and we said this about Clare last week, you have to stop Rory O'Connor, but so far it hasn't happened. And it's a bit like Brian Lohan with Tony Kelly. Tony Kelly is having his best years at the moment under Brian Lohan. He's kind of given a freedom to, you know, go where he wants, and the players have their heads up looking for him all the time, picking him out, and, like, he's flourishing. And it looks like there might be this sort of a relationship with Rory O'Connor and Wexford as well under Darragh Egan, that he could be, like, you know, go on to the next level.
Leinster are shaping up to be very competitive now, isn't it? I mean, at the moment you'd say that there's very little between the 4 teams, and you couldn't say with certainty what 3 teams are going to come out of Leinster. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a very competitive championship there.
Yeah, and particularly those 2 sides are facing down in Wexford Park or Chadwick Park, round 1, Leinster Hurling Championship. It's fierce, but yeah, I think the overall feelings, the Galway guys around me were, you know, Wexford far the better team, far better teamwork. That 2 goals were very well worked. I mean, even the second goal, like, the game's on a knife edge. It's 13 points to 110. But Oisin Foley with the block on Dahi Burke, setting it up for young Pepper for the goal. I mean, that then kind of gives Wexford the impetus, but Wexford closed out the game, I thought, amazingly well. I'm not sure in terms of Galway here, and I think Shefflin may have learned plenty out of this game in terms of the high of TUS Gaelic grounds in round 2. There was an awful lot of euphoria around the ground before the game, thinking this Galway team is legit. And it suddenly very realised to an awful lot of people in the ground that Galway were struggling on the day. I mean, Wexford were 1-9 to 7 points up at half time as well. Again, it was a very dominant display. I mean, I thought half backline for Wexford. Kieran, you alluded to it there last week. Superb performance off that half backline. They're going to win plenty of championship games on the back of those performances. McGovern, and then, as you say, Rory O'Connor's in red hot form at the moment. If he continues that, there's plenty of good days ahead for Wexford hurling.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't like come back and being critical on Matt Hanlon, but I do think once the pace increases, he might struggle for pace at wing back. But they have other options. They have lots of options there,
Yeah, like Galway, Conor Whelan sustained a knock at training on Friday night before the game. Brian Cannon as well is probably another insightful forward option, but they're depending an awful lot on Conor Cooney. Again, 9 points from play, or 9 points, 8 from frees. Joseph Cooney chipped in with a few points, but then after that, then you're struggling. You're struggling to see anyone, as I said, without naming names. Open play was pretty disastrous. So I think Shefflin has plenty to reflect on heading down to Cork for round 4. I suppose we can move into 1B. I suppose marquee result here was probably Dublin's away win in Thurles to Tipperary. Guys, what were your kind of thoughts on that? It was kind of a blustery all day in Thurles, but were Dublin full value for the win? Rory?
I thought so. I thought full value for the win. There was a couple of moments as well in the game, like they started off with an amount of wides and you're kind of thinking, oh, here we go. If Tip get a bit of a lead here, they might, go into themselves a bit, but they kept at it. Shooting sharpened up. It's like Burke is an unbelievable option, and frees Donald Burke, like it keeps you in the game, especially in league games, having a sharp shooter free taker. And yeah, I thought they're an incredibly physical team. And it's just funny, like you could look back the last 3 years of Matty Kenny and kind of think, is he lucky to be still there this year? But this year seems to be their most promising, where they look that they're actually, they look that they have really upped it from previous years. So I think they are a team that are really targeting the league. A National League would be a big boost to Dublin, and they know that. Matty Kenny knows that. So they're kind of a team that are going all out, whereas in a way, Tip, we know, are in transition. Bonner is still trying to figure out who his best players are. He's got lads coming back from colleges hurling all the time as well. So whereas Kenny kind of knows his team that bit better. But yeah, huge win for them. They've Kilkenny up in Parnell Park this weekend, and that's another one that they will be going all out for, is, get that marker against Kilkenny. So we flagged the very start of Dublin might be one of those teams that would really, benefit from a good league, and it seems to be that way, that they're on an upward curve. And as I said, a league win is something that will really, really put them in this right spot going into what's going to be a really competitive Leinster Championship now. We've all recognised that.
I thought their half forward line was excellent the last day as well. Do you mean?
Was that incredible? Yeah.
Yeah, Sutcliffe, and he didn't score but he was unbelievable. Yeah, and
just winning ball. Great to have a ball winner like that.
Yeah, the use of the ball was excellent. I thought as well that they were working the ball into space where forwards had the legs on the tip backs and create chances. And yeah, I thought they were good, and I thought that they were well worth the win, but they could have been caught at the end. Tip. It's that chance at the end. If he pulled in that first time, Tip could have come with. They wouldn't have deserved it. I don't think. Could have been stolen against the grain. But they were Dublin impressive and they're building well.
I think Dublin aren't probably not the most naturally gifted hurlers, bar Sutcliffe. I think he's immense the other day. Yeah, I think Dublin would have learned a lot from that. When you're 4 or 5 points up, you need to close the game out. You need to finish strong. Tips came at him with a half limp kind of attempt. The game did change a bit when the two Mcgraths came on. I thought they, really, Noel Mcgrath as well. I thought he was very good when he came on. One thing I will say is, thank God Johnny Murphy's from Limerick, because we never have to see him reffing the game. 43 frees in the game. My God. There's no need of it. Yeah, Morris played well. I think either side of half time, but other than that, he's in and out of the game. I think he kind of does that. Like, you'll never see him have a strong 70. He was the last 10 minutes before half time and the 10 minutes after half time. I thought he was good, but other than that, he was kind of non-existent. And I think Tip have a pace issue at the back. I think like Ronan Hayes, like he really got in easy. Like he got past 2 or 3 guys for the goal. So I think that might be something that might worry Colin Bonner. But still, we haven't seen a Tipperary their full team out yet. So we're still going to have Bonner Maher. We're still going to have Mcgrath to start. I think we might see it against Waterford. But I think Tip are in trouble.
Yeah, I think they're. I'm not sure actually. If you were to call Munster now at the moment, I'm not sure I think you'd have Waterford ahead of them, you'd have Limerick ahead of them, you'd have Cork ahead of them, and I think they might struggle to get out.
Mulcare.
Not sure. Yeah,
Roy, you're very quiet.
I think Clare and Tip play in Thurles in the first round. It's Tip second round, Clare's first round, and if Clare win that game, they have 2 home games and a neutral game against Cork and Thurles. Yeah. Like that is a huge game for Clare. It gives them 3 attempts then because Tipperary then are kind of going into a situation where they're playing Cork and Waterford. After it's uphill for Tipperary if they don't win that game. So it gives kind of Lohan can absolutely focus on that match. Like even forget about the rest of the round robin because that game is crucial to them, and they'll have that game. That is the one that Clare have to win to get through, and Tipperary are probably looking the same way. So that is a crucial game in round 2. And I'd agree with you. Tip like out of the new guys, we were saying like a lot of the we were saying last year that Liam Sheedy didn't blood new guys in or whatever, but very few of them have really put their hands up and kind of, as we said, like Bonner Maher is going to come back in. The Mcgrath, it doesn't look like there's anybody going to stop them getting back into the team. Nobody is holding them out. Reid Mcbride from Dublin was another lad that impressed me. I hadn't really seen much of before. Scored 1-2. Dublin are really kind of a team that nobody would have mentioned a month ago as being, right up there, even as Leinster contenders. But right now, you'd have to nearly, at the moment, see like Dublin and Wexford as kind of the 2 teams that have shot up in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose they've Kilkenny coming to town, Parnell Park this weekend. But I suppose going back to Tip, guys, Barrett was a late scratch from the game, but I think it really did expose kind of full backline vulnerabilities. And first up, Brian Mcgrath, magnificent hurler. He's not an inter-county full back. Not in the country. Mile is he?
Like he got absolutely skinned for the goal. But Bonner has, he's got plenty to ponder. He's going to be going into the championship not knowing, half his team really. I think there's a lot there for him to like. He's in there new this year, and he's trying things out, looking at players. Like he mightn't actually get a sense of what his best 15 is until the end of the year. To be honest with you, I'd worry for Tip. To be honest, I would.
But the full-back issue isn't. It's not something that's just coming onto them this year. Like they've had that issue for the last few years. Paddy Maher went back there, steadied the ship, and he took on the role. But it's been an ongoing issue, like for years. Like so. Paddy Maher, I think they planned on having him there for the next couple of years, and
yeah, they did.
The quick retirement is it's a huge hole to fill for him. Like,
and I'd agree with James. I think Bonner is going to be learning more about the Tip team during the championship, whereas other managements are that bit more sure. Like Cahill will more or less know his Waterford team. Kiley will know. Lohan will know. Kingston. Whereas Bonner is going to be learning about these guys in championship, which kind of is not the place really to, you'd like to go into championship knowing what you're close to what your team is anyway. So it is a disadvantage for Tipperary.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great win. And Owen O'Donnell, lads, he's playing superbly well as full back. We talked about the full back situation here. Tail of 2 sides. I mean, James Cannon never got a puck off him all game and was taken off. And I think Owen O'Donnell right now is probably one of the informed backs in the country.
Absolutely.
Great win for Dublin. And I think that Dublin game at the weekend looks sensational, written all over it. I suppose we can quickly review Kilkenny Laois, 228 to 17 points. I suppose the headlines here is probably debutant Tom Phelan had a dream debut, 2-1. His second goal was very rivaled over stuff like, kind of one of the goals of the season, really, an individual effort. Unfortunately for Laois, they were 4 points down at the break. Alan Murphy 13 points, Billy Ryan, Martin Keohane with 4 points each. And not much to write home about. There was a bit of a response from Laois, admittedly, but again, it all went away from him fairly quickly in that third quarter. And then Antrim v Waterford, and we'd mentioned this last week at the podcast about Corrigan Park being a very tough place to go. Guys, I wouldn't have expected kind of gotten into the last pocket of the ball.
And you'd have put your house on McMahon and scoring it too, wouldn't you?
I'll tell you what, the form that he's in. Yeah. But a cracking save from Sean O'Brien, though, to give Waterford the vital win there. And Austin Gleeson then coming up trumps with 8 points there. Very aggressive game. I mean, Waterford down to 14 players for a good stretch of that game. Colin Dunford had already scored 2-1. Got his marching orders. And Antrim had led by 4 points. But I suppose Gleeson post-game ruining a few defensive and attacking kind of issues during the game. But one thing from Antrim this year, they're refusing to die, lads. You know, it was a powerful last 10 minutes from them. And McManus, as you said, Kieran, he's playing wonderful hurling at the moment. And, you know, with the penalty, 13 points there. Again, he's been nothing short of sensational this season for Antrim.
Absolutely, yeah. It just proves how hard it's a tough place to go and win. A lot of good teams have, fell there. Obviously, Clare last year is the one that comes to mind, but it sets up for an interesting game for this weekend. Antrim come down to play Laois, so I think that'll give us an idea of where the two teams are at really going into the Joe McDonagh, I suppose.
I think Antrim surely would that's the game they're targeting all along. I'd say they've had 3 very good competitive games now, and they've lost all 3, but this is the game for them. There'll be a bit of pressure on them as well, because you'll probably be hearing all week is that that if they lose that game, then the 3 good performances they put in are out the window really. So this is the game that surely they were targeting. And Laois, Laois look like they're going backwards. They look a bit all over the shop. I fancy Antrim, to be honest with you, at the weekend, in that one.
Still, Laois though have had a decent record against Antrim in recent years. I mean, go back to the relegation playoff in the championship last season. I mean, I think everyone was kind of fancying Antrim to do a job on Laois. And in fairness to Laois, they're good, skillful hurlers, and they always rise to that occasion. But this is a key game for both teams. I mean, to kind of get relegated out of the 1A, 1B kind of system, I think would be a bitter blow for either side. So that'll be an interesting game. Guys, round 4, 1A and 1B. Could I get a few predictions off you? Clare v Limerick, Cork v Galway, and Wexford v Offaly. Maybe we'll start with James first on the 1A games.
I fancy Limerick. I think we'll get a response from them in Ennis. It's not going to be an easy one, I'd say, but I think, Limerick will want to be finishing the league with 2 wins to go into the championship. So I'd be fancying Limerick in that one. Cork and Galway. Yeah, it's a bit of an intriguing one, really. I think probably Cork, just on form at the moment. But we're not really sure if Kingston. I think Kingston has got what he wanted out of the league already from the 3 games. So I don't know what his thoughts are in terms of winning the league. I don't know if that's the be all and end all for Cork. So, but I would fancy them at the weekend, I think, against Galway. And Wexford and Offaly, that's going to be Wexford, I think, for me.
Yeah, Rory, what about yourself?
Yeah, Ennis, Limerick might just shade it. I think it depends what, it'd be interesting to see the teams when they're picked. Are Limerick going to go full court press and with their strongest team available, or are they going to do kind of what they did last week, try and blood players in? So again, that one will be, I'd imagine Clare are going to go as strong as possible and try and, as I said, get some bit of confidence, taking out one big team going into the championship. So yeah, I'll go Limerick in a close one. Then going down, I fancy Galway down there. Galway seems to have a kind of this turn it on, turn off, and this kind of turn it on the tap whenever. And games when you don't expect it, they come out and they play really well. They've done well against Cork in the league down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the recent past. I think Galway are going to turn on the style again, and we'll be talking about them next week, confused as to where they actually are, because 1 week good, 1 week bad. But as I said, maybe Shefflin is really targeting certain games, but yeah, I'll go with Galway there. And hopefully Offaly will build on last week's performance of 55 minutes and close the gap a bit more. You're hoping that being in Division 1 is going to stand to them. But as we've seen in the past, even with Antrim last year, that sometimes in the Division 1, and it can turn out badly for you as well if you're losing all the games going into Championship. And at least hopefully Offaly will have a really close one and bring it to the end for one game. But yeah, again, hard to see past Wexford.
Yeah, Kieran.
Yeah, I think starting with the Wexford Offaly game, it'll be interesting to see what team Egan puts out for Wexford, because a lot of these players have played every game, so is it time to give them a break and throw in the younger guys? I still think regardless they'll have enough, and they come out, especially at home as well. Cork and Galway, I'm going to say Cork, and it'll tee it up for a Cork Wexford in the last round, like a cup final to top the group. So I think that would be down at Wexford Park as well. So I think that would be a good occasion. But I think Cork at home, they're not going to want to disappoint the home fans. And Cork. And I think we have to see a reaction from Limerick. And based on that, I'm going to go Limerick. But we know, I think once the team is named, we'll know what intentions Kylie has for it.
Exactly. I suppose Midwest Derby as well between Clare and Limerick. Doesn't take much for those two teams to tango. So I'm going to be absolutely neutral here. I think it could be a draw here, lads, because I think there's plenty at stake for both. If Limerick goes 0-4 here, lads, we talk about Tullamore and we kind of were talking about a developmental side going out against Offaly. I don't think that could happen,
No.
In Tullamore, so in the last game. So I think from that perspective, it'll be interesting. But Cork, Galway, I was very worried about Galway defensively, right down the spine. Daithí Burke and Gerard Hegarty. I'm just fearing in terms of the run game of Cork, if they get that anyway established at all, I think Galway are in serious trouble defensively. And if the ground dries up at all, it was a flash in the pan performance last weekend, but I was pretty shocked by the spine of that Galway defence. Weren't very impressive at all. Now, Pádraig Mannion was out with a HIA very early on during the game, but still, it kind of, if I was Shefflin, I'd be rather worried with two marquee guys like that getting turned pretty quick. So I'll go Cork, and I think Wexford over Offaly. 1B, Dublin v Kilkenny, Waterford v Tip. These are all decent games here, lads, and Laois v Antrim. Maybe, Rory, we'll get your predictions first.
I think Dublin are going to keep their run going, although at the same time Cody will be mad to lay a marker down up in Parnell Park, which is traditionally tough. But really tight game. I'm going to say a couple of red cards and Dublin win. Also then, you're looking, the other two games seem to be a bit more straightforward in that, it's going to be very hard to see Laois getting anything out of their match. And I think Waterford as well. Again, it'll depend on team selection, and are Waterford happy with what they've done in the league so far? They're still in contention to win 1B. They're level on points with Dublin after the draw. So it depends. Does Liam Cahill like Matty Kenny? Does he value a league win? If he does, I think Waterford will beat Tipperary if they go strong.
Kieran?
I think I'm gonna stick with Dublin as well. We might see some of the Ballyhale guys, but I think the league is going to mean something to Dublin this year, so I think they'll want to win it, and at home as well. Parnell Park's a hard place to go, so I'm going to go tip Dublin there. As Kilkenny, I think Waterford, you might see some of the Ballygunner guys back even on the bench. I think they're not going to want to lose the tip at home. So I think Waterford, and I hope Antrim win. I think they've been the better of the two teams and the better team to watch. So yeah, I'd hope Antrim.
Perfect. And James?
Yeah, Laois and Antrim, I fancy Antrim to win that. Dublin, Kilkenny, I'm not sure. Maybe marginally siding with Dublin, but I think Cody's going to be looking at this as well as to see where they're at. So marginally Dublin after an arm wrestle, and then I fancy Waterford against Tip. I listened during the week there, or on Twitter there, they're calling it El Cahilico. which I thought was a good one. But I think I don't think Cal's going to want to lose the tip, so I think he'd be going for it. So I fancy Waterford.
I'll be with you there, James. I think the Waterford tip game, that could be one of the marquee headline games. Just a needle on this game. I think with Liam Cahill in the off season, the rumours regarding Liam Sheedy's departure, Cahill was being hotly tipped and committed to Waterford. And it's going to be very interesting to see what team selection he brings out, because again, he's gone in local media to suggest, I'm going to give the young guys more of an opportunity. If he does this, I think Waterford could give Tipperary a serious hiding here. And going in to the end of the league campaign, I think that would be a massive, devastating result for Tipperary and their championship hopes. I think Waterford are winning this one probably by 8-9 points. I think Dublin-Kilkenny is probably marquee game, and I would probably hedge it to Dublin. Again, when's the last time you've kind of written off Kilkenny at your peril? But I think Dublin have an awful lot to gain off this. A huge psychological boost in terms of the championship. If they could beat Cody, and if the Ballyhale guys are in there, even better. So I'd marginally go with them. I think Laois Antrim, I think that's been televised on Tina G as well. I would hope Antrim win, but I do have this nagging thought here that this is the key game for Antrim. This is where they're going to be under the spotlight, under pressure. People are expecting them to beat Laois, just given the hidings that Laois have had. And Laois coming in, knowing that one result could potentially stave off relegation. I think it might be too much here for Antrim, unfortunately. Laois maybe by 1 or 2 points, but I think that could be a pretty tight game. So yeah, with that, that's that. Rory, I don't know if we want to talk about the Freshers League, third level. I know you're kind of associated. I know you've been sworn to secrecy in terms of final team selections and all that, but you couldn't help but perk the ears up and the eyes when you saw the result of the semi-final with the University of Limerick during the week. What a comprehensive performance, and going in pretty well going into the final next week.
Yeah, I was at the game last night, and as I walked in, I saw John Kiley there, and I thought, this is going to be great for Joe Mcgrath and UL with Colin Coughlin there and Cathal O'Neill chomping at the bit to impress Kiley, and turned out that way. Both of them were brilliant, as was Aidan O'Connor, Limerick under 20 from last year, scored 111 in the full forward line, and he's another guy that's probably watching Limerick last week, thinking I'm as good as some of those boys out in the pitch there. Adam English was very good as well, so he got a big performance, but they're a very talented team, and sometimes you kind of wonder like how many players are going to turn in a performance. Are you going to get a performance out of 9-10 guys? But last night it was pretty much the whole team. It was Harlem Globetrotter stuff. Like, there was just scores from all angles, and I don't know, was there a spread of 12 different scores? And then when Colin Coughlin got taken off, like they're bringing on Colin O'Mara, who was centre back in the Clare under 20s last year, who stormed up the pitch and scored a point immediately after coming on. So UCD were probably thinking, what's going on here? Even the subs coming in are county under 20s. Like, I think altogether, like Limerick are without as well. Oren Cahill from Aerogue, who was their starting wing forward, he hurt his shoulder. He was missing. Mark Fitzgerald, who's a Waterford senior. He had a bad injury in a match in the league match against Dublin, I believe, a broken jaw. So off the ball incident, I hear as well. But yeah, so there was like two big players there without, not to mention Liam Lynch from Mcgrath here, who was a star player for Mcgrath in the intermediate championship win this year in Limerick. He unfortunately did a cruciate injury earlier in the campaign. So kind of without these players, and they're still putting out a team, like there was more senior players on the Freshers team than on the Fitzgibbon team, more intercounty seniors. So
that's scary, isn't it? That is a scary stat right there, isn't it?
Yeah, with Patrick Crotty as well, like Clare senior at the moment, doing well with Clare. It's one of those freak years where they just have strength and depth everywhere, But yeah.
And who are University of Limerick meeting in the Freshers final, Rory?
Yeah, DCU in a tight one in the other semi-final. They beat Cork IT last night after extra time. They did meet in the league. It was on in UL, and UL won heavily in the league semi-final. But like, I don't think that'll matter in the final. It'll be a neutral venue, grass pitch, I presume as well. Like the surface does suit UL with their speed and touch and everything. It was on a 4G pitch last night, but I'm sure like DCU probably train a similar setup above anyway. They have the 4G pitch as well. So yeah, it'll be. I think it's next Wednesday. It's fixed for. Should be a good one. Yeah, and as I said, it's like this Freshers team is kind of getting a lot of interest from intercounty management because they have a lot of players involved. And yeah, as I said, when I saw John Kiley going in, I was thinking UL manager Joe Mcgrath is going to be pretty happy he's here, because yeah, the Limerick boys were pretty sensational, like last night in particular. Yeah, it was such an epic score line that they scored as well, Rory. And best of luck to you. Anyway. Guys, it's been a lengthy one, but I think we've plenty to discuss there. Some great points. I'd like to thank Kieran Collins, Ruairi Walsh, and James Mulcare for all the time and the insight tonight. We'll return again next week, reviewing round 4. Let's hope, Kieran, that Limerick
Limerick's win.
String a result together. Otherwise, I don't know if it'll be Radiohead album for round 5. But until then, guys, thanks very much.
Cheers, Mark.
Cheers, Mark. Cheers, lads.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.